It's match day with Arsenal taking on PSV in Eindhoven. I'm currently here in the Netherlands looking ahead to the game against the Dutch side. I'm hoping you can hear, see, and listen to me clearly as much as possible in today's Arsenal News Show. Hello and welcome to the Gooner Talk, back again with you guys and girls for another episode of what is the Arsenal News Show. Joining you every single morning at 8 a.m. UK time. It's 9 a.m. here in Eindhoven this morning. Of course, we're an hour ahead of everybody elsewhere. And I hope that you've had a good start to your week. I hope that anyone that's travelled out here has managed to make it okay. It's what's meant to be a relatively simple journey. Mine was anything but simple yesterday. We got up at it was about 4:45, left the house about 5:15, got a train, managed to get to Gatwick in good time. Got a notification that my plane had been delayed, but there was no information on the boards or anywhere about that specific delay whatsoever. Got on the plane at the time I was meant to, 8:30 to fly at 8:55. Doors shut. Fasten your seatbelts, make sure your tray table's away and your windows are all the usual. And then we got a notification from the captain that was like, so we're going to be waiting for about an hour and a bit because there's fog at Amsterdam. So just stay put and chill. And we're like, what? Why are we here? Why have we been brought onto the plane? Why have we not just been able to chill in the lobby, or at least have, our devices and seatbelts off if indeed you can't do anything? It was a really strange one. And then we ended up staying on the tarmac for 2 hours, landed in Amsterdam, and 4 flights had arrived at the same time. We were then in a position where, we couldn't park the plane in the right place. So it was just an absolute nightmare. And then it took an hour to get through passport control as well, because people thought Brexit would be a good idea. Less about that, the better, though. But yes, ended up finally getting to Eindhoven after an hour and a half train after that. So left the house at 5:30, arrived in Eindhoven about 4 p.m. local time, so 3 p.m. UK time. It was horrendous. Absolutely horrendous in terms of a travel. Hopefully going back will be much, much smoother. But yeah, it was not the best. But thank you so much, as all of you, as always, for tuning in and joining me. Really appreciate your time. Of course, yesterday evening in the Philips Stadium was Mikel Arteta's press conference. We're going to talk about that. Good morning to those joining us live, though, in the chat box. Stevie, Carlton, SW, Tom. We've got Zed Tom. We've got Simple Unity, Black Shine, Paul, Fizzy, Knowledge, Trevor, Shari, Huda Gooner, Jamil, Maximius, Rowan, Mark, Matt G, and plenty more of you guys and girls as well. Thank you, as always, for tuning in. And as I said, I'm hoping that the audio is coming through okay. I'm having to use the AirPods for today and tomorrow. So apologies for that. Back to the usual settings on Thursday. So do bear with me on that front. Right, let's jump to today's story, shall we? We begin with, of course, without able to do a show yesterday properly, because we did a recorded show. I hope you enjoyed that with James Green from Sky. Got some good comments. Of course, a lot of news broke while we were live. So, or rather, while the show was going out live. So we couldn't react to that, of course. But still, we're going to be looking at that story a little bit later on today. But yeah, we couldn't discuss what was a chaotic victory in the WSL for the Arsenal women's team. Of course, a 4-3 win in the end over West Ham, despite going 2-0 down in this game. Great to see Chloe Kelly get on the score sheet, of course, and also in the end getting the result that we needed. Leah Williamson getting the equaliser before Mariona Caldente scoring a penalty to give Arsenal a 4-3 lead. So really important victory to keep that momentum going. Even though the WSL, of course, in terms of the title is most likely gone at this stage, we still need to keep winning for those Champions League qualification spots as the race for those positions hots up as well. So it's a really important victory and a very entertaining one for all those that were, of course, in attendance. In terms of the under-21s, no Max Dowman because he played with the under-18s in the FA Youth Cup on Friday. But the rest of the under-21s that were available to play managed to draw a 2-2 away at Crystal Palace as well. So some positive results overall, I think. Development of these players is what's more important in these youth cups and youth leagues, more so than the results are. And getting some more important minutes on the field for those players would be very key indeed. But we've got to talk about the two key stories of yesterday. We'll come on to the press conference in a second. But the main story that did drop yesterday was that news regarding Andrea Berta, the Italian director, who, of course, most recently worked at Atletico Madrid. Fabrizio Romano reporting in the morning that Berta has supposedly taken a lead candidate position in place to be Arsenal's next sporting director. Reports from Italy have suggested indeed that AC Milan, who also wanted Andrea Berta to take over in that position, are now effectively have been told that he won't be joining AC Milan because he's going to be going to Arsenal. So this is developing quite quickly in the space of the last few days, really. Certainly the feeling I got from speaking to a few contacts of mine is that this is moving in a very positive direction. And even though it's kind of been played down elsewhere, a lot of feelings are that this is in a good position for Arsenal, and hopefully one that we could see move into a positive place in the next, I guess, week or two, maybe, because Arsenal want a quick resolution. We want a solution in March. We want to make sure that this person is in place ahead of the summer transfer window. This is, I think, what a lot of people were hoping for. I think the majority of people were hoping that Andrea Berta would be the man that ultimately, or someone of his profile, would be who Arsenal would go for. Someone with experience at a top European club, someone with experience over a long period of time of doing some major deals, particularly at centre forward, and bringing them into work with and challenge Mikel Arteta. Someone that wouldn't necessarily be with a clear link to Arsenal. Andrea Berta doesn't have that. Would be a completely fresh look, fresh new ideas to the Arsenal at that position in the sporting director role. The suggestions I've heard that Jason Ato would still remain with the club, but potentially would be offered a different type of position. Maybe they will have a sporting director and technical director, or a co-sporting director position. I'm not sure, but there is certainly what I'm hearing intention that Jason Ato would work with, not be replaced, which I think is the right decision. I know that people have got kind of an opinion of Jason Ato based off of the January window, which is fair enough to a degree, but he has done a lot more work than what you've just seen in that January transfer window. It was never my personal choice to get the position on a full-time basis. I think we've gone over that quite a few times. But certainly Andrea Berta would be, I think, what, in terms of a profile, what most people were hoping for. So, yeah, really positive news, this. And I think certainly when you look at kind of the decisions that Arsenal have made in recent years, this is quite a bold one. This is quite a bold move by Arsenal. It's not a very current Arsenal type decision. And I think that's a good thing. I think something fresh, something new, something different, something ambitious is what is needed, is what fans have, of course, wanted. And I think that Andrea Berta would be that. Now, I have, of course, I'm not naive enough to think, and I agree, I think I saw a tweet from Rory yesterday, Rory Talks Football, where he put up saying, all of a sudden, everyone's acting like they've known who Andrea Berta is, what his work is, and they've been wanting him for years. The reality is that 99% of people only really heard of Andrea Berta about a week ago. Of course, being in the football and journalistic sphere, there are benefits to being a little bit more clued up on these things. And obviously, I've got my own interest in Spanish football, as many people who are long-time listeners of the channel will know about. I can't say that Andrea Berta was, for me, one of those people I was looking at either. Some of them were left field, not left field, but the high-profile picks that weren't really being talked about was Simon Rolfs by Leverkusen. I mentioned him right at the start. But Andrea Berta was not somebody on my radar, because I think at the time when Edu resigned, Andrea, of course, was still very much with Atletico Madrid. He left the club at the start of this year and is now obviously open, and apparently has been working on his English and been looking to move to the Premier League. And it seems that this opportunity has opened up at the perfect time for him. So, yeah, really, really interesting. And hopefully, of course, we get some news on this, and I'll give you any updates as and when we get them further into the future. But Mikel Arteta did take his press conference yesterday, as you all very much know by now. You can read every single word in detail from the press conference on our live blog and also, of course, on our transcript available on the Football.London website. And if you head over there, you'll get every word of the questions as well. I like to make sure those questions are transcribed as well as the answers. So if you want to read a full list of what the exact question was and, of course, what the exact answer was, if you head over to Football.London, of course, you can read that full thing. And speaking of which, we're going to head over there right now because there was a few interesting kind of little gems, I think, from the press conference. And firstly, we know that Josh Kroenke was in attendance at Arsenal's training ground yesterday. He watched the training session. I think he'll probably be flying out today for the game, I imagine, as well. And I do think that there is probably something to be said about his presence at the club at the moment and a lot of this Andrea Berta. I don't know that for sure, but I think link and connection to make that those kind of going hand in hand as well. But he was asked by Jordan from The Sun whether or not there were kind of like him being there. And he says, did you manage to kind of speak to him? And he said, no, because he had to go. But yes, very happy to have him around. He's around a lot of times for big moments as well. He's the one that he really wants to be with the team, and he's great to have him. So yeah, he's been around today and hopefully in the next few days as well. Asked if, of course, kind of like if whether or not his visit lifts you and lifts the players. And he says, regardless in what situation you are in the league, when you start to come to this stage of the Champions League, there is something else. You feel it in the atmosphere and the energy of the place. It's something else because it's a competition that you don't play weekly and you play in a moment where you are in or you are out, and that gives you urgency and it gets the best out of you for sure as well, which I quite liked, in terms of his answer. It gives you something tangible. It gives us something to grasp, to hold on to, and to bring back the energy. And I think that will certainly be very, very important for Arsenal as well. Moving to more kind of general terms about how the feeling is at the moment. He said it's a game that really brings different energy. It's a competition that puts everybody on their toes. We've done a lot already this season here, and now is the moment to start to make another strong step in the direction that we want. So very excited for the game. I think in the group stage, because it was different, I could see it very open. Now I see it very closed because I just see one opponent, which is PSV, and tomorrow's game, and that's it. But in the first stage, I think it's been very, very different. John Cross asked about like this kind of weird format, that the round robin system that we've got now, and whether or not he was kind of mapping his path to the final. Can you see it? Do you like that? Does it scare you? Do you not get the reality from it? How do you see it? And he says, the reality is, being a coach, I just look at what is ahead. And what is ahead is a team that has eliminated a team like Juventus with the history. So I know the difficulty. We played against them a lot in recent years, and we know the difficulty of the match. We spoke to Jurriën Timber before Mikel Arteta came out, and he was asked a couple of times about I actually asked him whether or not he'd given Mikel Arteta any advice about PSV, having, of course, played against them several times during his time with Ajax. But he quite rightly pointed out that the amount of times that Arsenal have played against PSV, it doesn't really need to give Arteta any advice. He knows PSV now. He knows everything there is to know about PSV because he's been here now for the third time and is playing them once again. So he doesn't need any advice in that regard. But I asked Mikel Arteta actually kind of what he'd used a rare week off, and how did he use it? He said, well, because of the schedule that we had, given most of the players some time off, as well as after the last game that we had and the lead in the preparation that we normally do. It's true that we have more time, so we focus a lot on things than us as well, not having to just do game plans in a very short training session related to what's going to happen in the game. So that was very useful. I was intrigued to know that he kind of given those players a bit of time off as well, considering that there isn't much time between games, really. It was only 6 days, and it was a weekend off that they don't usually have. Some recuperation, some recovery. I was interested that there wasn't maybe more said about training sessions during this period of time, because he said before about how they haven't had any time really to train whatsoever. And maybe I thought that there'd be more. Maybe, of course, he's not telling us everything that went down, but I was a little bit intrigued by that. But that's Arteta's presser. Of course, so if you want to catch up on the whole transcript, it is available over on the Football.London website. Right, let's go to part 2 and more, and your questions right after this. I can see the connection's a little dodgy, so I'm just going to take a quick second to switch over to my hotspot. I may just dip out for a second, but hopefully it will improve the connection. So 2 seconds, and I'll be back. Okay, we should be back and hopefully a little bit better in terms of connection and seeing me a bit better too. So thank you for bearing with me there. Let's jump into the chat box though, shall we? I think that's probably the best place to go. And move to Martin says, Joe, he gets a pass because it's Real Madrid and Barcelona, but you don't get one for going against City, etc. as well. Benny says Atletico don't play the most exciting football, but he is a good manager. Of course, talking about Diego Simeone, I believe, here at the moment. For me, Simeone, I see a few people saying Atletico don't play the most exciting football. He's a good manager. Joe saying you don't really rate him being a manager taking. Oh, sorry, someone else saying I don't really rate Simeone taking on those two. Simeone is Atletico Madrid. Atletico Madrid is Simeone. I'm not a big fan of him like joining Arsenal. I never thought that was the right choice. I never ever thought that was the right choice at all. I feel as though he's very suited to them, and Arsenal in a way is not the right was never the right pick. You know, for Simeone, he's not won something in quite a while now, and I just felt that situationally that was always the club for him, and it wasn't right that he would um, move into that position. So yeah, for me, from my perspective at least, I'm not really ever going to be on the Simeone should come to Arsenal. That said, you can still be very appreciative of what Simeone has done during that time at that club. And he's worked well with Andrea Berta. He's worked well there together to build a squad that has taken on Barca and taken on Real Madrid and got to Champions League latter stages of those competitions as well. So I think there's a lot of pros to when it comes to someone like Andrea Berta. The cons would be that there's been a few risky moves, a few big spend, high spend moves that have not worked out. Joao Felix, of course, stands out as quite a key one. They brought back Diego Costa as well for big money from Chelsea. Didn't really work out. Aval Morata as well was brought in for quite big money. And that was an okay deal. I mean, he scored a winning goal at Anfield and not Liverpool out of the Champions League. But, you know, there's been Thomas Lamar didn't turn out to be too good of a deal either, but players like Rodri, players like Griezmann, who they brought back to the club as well, and also signed, and then in the first place in Real Sociedad too. You know, there are some standout moves, and that club has gone from strength to strength and has been able to continue to take on and be competitive and be in the Champions League and fight for trophies. And I think that when you're going up against the Real Madrid and Barca every single year, that's a huge ask. And of course, then being a club like Arsenal, who have got to take on a Manchester City and got to take on a Liverpool, you want to have somebody that's going to be able to, be as effective at taking on financially superior clubs to you and be shrewder in your business. So, and he's also quite good at selling. Atletico Madrid have been really good sellers in the market, have made big money for players as well in the market. So, that is another thing I think that they need to think about. RRDM says, can Berta handle limited budget? This might not be the best choice. He could struggle with the constraints affecting the course. Well, as I just said there, he's got a really good sales record. They do well at when it comes to moving players on and getting good prices for players. So that's also going to be. And in terms of a limited budget, Arsenal are still going to have a lot of money to spend in the summer. We're not going to be penny pinching. We have freedom to spend in this window. So he's going to be the type that gets the opportunity to work with the ownership, work with Arteta, spend the money that we have available to us. But in moments where the pressure is on and maybe the finances are tighter, we know that he can work shrewdly. We know that he can demand big prices for the players in this field. So yeah, I'm very much looking forward to seeing if indeed he is the guy that takes over. If he's the guy to take Arsenal's kind of transfer and recruitment element to that next level. Ashley says mentality issues with Sesko. He signed because of development and top four. Ethan MLS playing Leipzig is a favourite for top four with or without him. Is Arteta love for Kai so strong that you felt discouraged by the move? No, Arsenal wanted Sesko last summer, of course. It never got to a really advanced stage because Sesko wanted a quick resolution to the deal. He wanted to sort out his future before the Euros. Arsenal still had Eddie Nketiah on the books, and they needed to make sure that he was going to move off before they could commit to a big money striker signing during the summer window. And they had other desires to improve that left-hand side, which of course they did with Calafiori and we did with Marino. And Sesko just signed a new contract because he thought, if I can't sort out my future quickly, I'm not in any rush to move. I could stay at a good club in the Champions League with Leipzig, be their starting striker guaranteed. And of course, if I move to Arsenal now, I might not be guaranteed that starting striker position. I think that changes this summer. And for that reason, I think that it would change things dramatically if Arsenal were to come in 2025. But we will have to wait and see. For me, I think he looks the most likely candidate to be Arsenal's striker next season. But things can change. Azra says, what are your thoughts on Ivan Perisic's comments about Arsenal? Classic Spurs, kind of, that rivalry, I think, coming out there. Nothing really to write home too much about. He basically said he felt like Arsenal were missing something. They hadn't really won anything recently. He's not wrong. He's just saying what the reality is right now. Arsenal have been missing something. They've missed that ability to be able to get it over the line, and they haven't been able to pick up the trophies that we know that they're probably and have been good enough to get. And sadly, things have happened that have stopped us from getting to those great places. But I think it's just talk before the game. I'm really not reading too much into what Ivan Perisic was saying. Martin says, Trevor, I bet that was brilliant. I have zero knowledge of anything mechanical. I just fly. Oh, are we talking about flying in the chat? People are talking about the fact that they're flying. Trevor says, Heathrow started at 15, took early retirement to work full-time in football. Well, there you go. Trevor's telling us about his life story. They're working in, what's the word? Aerodynamics? I don't know what the phrase is. But thanks for the insight, mate. Avionics. There you go. That's the word. Aviation. Yeah, that's the word. Aerodynamics. What am I talking about? James says, who are the players in the squad that Arsenal need to upgrade upon that fans won't like? Such as kind of the Ramsdale for Raya. Yeah, it's a really good question, actually, because obviously when Ramsdale was replaced by Raya, there was a lot of talk, a lot of criticism, a lot of scrutiny of that transfer. Why do we need two first-team goalkeepers? We've got Ramsdale. Well, I think you've all been shown very much how much we needed David Raya. We have absolutely benefited from having a much better goalkeeper in David Raya. We benefited particularly last season. He's been big in big moments this season. He's probably one of the more consistent players this season in a really chaotic campaign. In terms of players that we need to upgrade that it might not be comfortable, you look at the left wing. I think Martinelli Trossard is a really obvious candidate. That for me was always going to be a very interesting area for the summer. Is if one of those was to move, who would we be able to, bring it that was going to upgrade it? Is Nico Williams a possibility? Only for me if one of those two do go, would we be in a position to upgrade that side? So I think that's the most obvious candidate for a position where you've got players that could start, you've got players that could still contribute, you've got players that could still be starting figures in a team that could challenge for a title, but we could still get better. So I feel the left-hand side, James, is probably, that left wing position is probably the most likely one. Mr. Thugi says, limited budget sounds odd, given we pretty much spend more than most summers. So if anything, he will have room to manoeuvre. AJ says he had a more limited budget at Atletico Madrid. Arsenal spends slightly more than Atletico, so he'll be even less limited, which is a fair point. Ryan says, Tom, do you think the Roberto Alaba appointment is off with Andrea Berta's rumours? Could this be a negotiating tactic? There was certainly some suggestions that Roberto Alaba's kind of discussions with Arsenal obviously were there. Like, there were definitely conversations, and he looked a really, likely candidate at one point. But Arsenal have always been very keen to not rush this process, to make sure that they consider all candidates, and some candidates only became available to talk about more recently and to have discussions with and have conversations with. And I imagine Andrea Berta being someone who left Atletico in the start of this year, that was potentially one of those. So that's why Arsenal didn't rush into a decision. It could have been that, a lot of people that were clamouring and saying Arsenal made a massive, massive mistake by not appointing a sporting director before January. We may not have been able to get the best potential option. We may not have been able to get someone like an Andrea Berta at that point. So it was important that Arsenal were patient because they needed to get the right appointment. There's no point rushing this one. Yes, it's important that we do it before the summer, but rushing into a decision and getting the wrong person in would have been far worse than not doing that. let's go to Nikki, who says, when we sign a new sporting director, will there be some unexpected summer signings? And if yes, who? I mean, if they're unexpected, I have absolutely no idea who that might be. But someone has new ideas. Someone comes into the club with wanting to stamp their authority, want to give their thoughts on things. I imagine there could be some players that we are at the moment not talking about that we could end up having a conversation about, in a few months' time. Promark says, would you keep Martinelli or Trossard as a bench option, keeping in mind the wages and everything? Yeah, I think, you would keep one of them. It depends upon the offers that you get. If you get a really good offer for Martinelli, you may be open to selling him because you've got a really good offer for him. But if Trossard is the one that goes, you look at Martinelli as the better long-term option to have, someone who's younger, someone who can offer more. But then equally, you could look at Trossard and say, well, he's arguably been the better of the two over the last 18 months, certainly got more goals. And for that reason, maybe it's better to bring a younger player in and have the more experienced Trossard in the team. But it's very difficult. Gary says there's some suggestions about Jonathan David. Any querying I did on Jonathan David was pushed back very hard. So I wouldn't necessarily buy too much into those stories that came out yesterday. At the moment, I got quite a bit of pushback on the Jonathan David claims. So nothing there, I'm told, at the moment. Nothing on Jonathan David and Arsenal right now. Benny says, I feel if we have Havertz, free agent David and Sesko, again, I don't think there's much in the David stuff, just to make that very clear. We will be well stocked in the attack as they have and would feed off each other. For the record, though, Jonathan David on a free in the summer would be a good deal for Arsenal. And I think it would effectively just replace Gabriel Jesus now. It doesn't stop us from signing another centre forward either. A very versatile type of forward too. So it'd probably be a bit of a no-brainer, but nothing on the Jonathan David thing. Not yet, anyway. If that it's not saying that it won't happen in the summer, but speaking to somebody who's got links very much into the player, it got quite a bit of pushback at this point in time. Ashley says, I love Kai, but Sesko's got to back himself to take the spot. You saw us in January. We needed Sesko legend status if he'd have helped us win a title. I really don't think you need to buy too much into the whole Sesko not moving on or choosing not to move last summer. It was far, far, far more within his interest to stay with Leipzig for another season, get that regular game time, get that guaranteed striker spot, playing in the Champions League, playing in an elite European competition in the Bundesliga. There's absolutely nothing in that at all. Trevor says, my grandson was a plasterer, got his flying license, and now he's a captain for Ryanair. He's proved that if you've got ambition, you can get there after leaving school with one GCSE. There you go. Brad says, push back, as in stop asking until the deal's done. No, as in there's just not much in that story. There's just nothing really happening in that regard right now. So I think the claim was that there was an offer. As far as I've been told, that's not the case. Chino says Jason Neto can stay to be a mascot. Mr. Thugi says, not sure about the future of Martinelli. He's on around 160 to 180k a week. And if we give him a new contract, he will earn even more. We just can't have non-starters on that kind of money, I think. I think you're probably right with that. If he signs a new contract, he would probably be in the 200,000s, you'd imagine. But we need to make sure that we do keep him under contract because we've got a sellable asset there. The same as, a lot of people moaned about giving Nketiah a new deal, got 30 million quid for the guy. Gave Balogun a new deal. Yes, there was more someone that we wanted, but just giving him that new deal and fighting to get that new contract got Arsenal more than 30 million quid in the end. So, yeah, it's important that you do keep players on the books that have a sell-on value, because you can benefit a lot from those, in the future. JC says, which of the current squad do you definitely see leaving in the summer? Kivior, Zinchenko, Partey, Jorginho, Vieira, Lokonga, Tavares, Tierney, of course. It's 8. Anybody else? I don't think so. Jesus injured. Tomiyasu injured. Don't see them going. Yeah, I wouldn't say I definitely see Trossard or Martinelli leaving, but one of them could go. But I don't definitely see Reece Nelson again. I don't know because of the injury. So I don't know whether or not he would be able to be sold because I don't know how long he's going to be out for. He had to have surgery on a hamstring injury, which could be long term, like Havertz. So it could be that we won't get Nelson out the door either. So yeah, Right, that brings us to the end of today's show. Thank you so much for tuning in, as always. I look forward to talking to you tomorrow morning, looking back on that clash with PSV in the Champions League this evening. Massive game for Arsenal. Really need to get a positive result, of course, in Eindhoven to take back to the Emirates next week. If you've enjoyed the show, please do drop a like on the video. Please do subscribe to the channel if you're new around here. There's notifications turned on so you never miss a show. I'll be back with you tomorrow, as I say. Stay safe, stay well, stay happy and respectful. And as always, up the Arsenal.